everyone, and welcome to the webinar today. My name is Nung, and I will be your facilitator for today's session. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items to note. Do feel free to adjust the size of the presentation box on your console by expanding the corner of the box. And if at any time throughout the presentation you are experiencing connection issues, please try refreshing the console by pressing the F5 button if you are a PC user, or Command R for Mac users. And if the problem persists, please try closing the event window and then relaunching the event again. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please submit them in the Q&A box, and we will have a live Q&A session at the end. And finally, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with you afterwards. Without further ado, I would like to hand the time over to Tanuj, the founder and CEO of 18th Digitech. Over to you, Tanuj. Thank you.
Thank you, Nung. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of our e-commerce webinar series. Today's episode is titled The Road to Success and features Dean Salakas from the Party People and Jennifer Diaz, Head of Growth for Starshipit. Dean is a well-known name in the Australian e-commerce industry. He was named top 50 people in e-commerce by the Australian Retail Association and has won many awards, including Independent Retailer, Retail Leader, and Innovator of the Year. Dean has been a true innovator when it comes to e-commerce. He has become a leader in his industry by always being first to the market and keeping his business agile to meet new customer trends. My second guest is Jennifer Diaz. Jennifer is an experienced commercial leader in e-commerce space with 15 years experience in providing consultative transport and logistics solutions. Being the head of growth for Starshipit, she is passionate about creating exceptional customer experience through smart automation and system integrations and helping business accelerate their growth. We'll start with Jennifer talking to Dean about his journey from the humble beginnings as a small family business to becoming a leader in his category. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Tanuj, for that wonderful, warm introduction. And thank you, Adobe, for having me here in Digitech. Warm welcome to you all. I'm Jen Diaz, Head of Growth at Starshipit, and really excited to be here today. Let's kick our discussions off with the warm and fabulous Chief Party Dude, Dean Salakas. Thank you, Dean, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jen. Great to be here.
Amazing. Dean, you have been renowned for so many accolades, incredible awards, Innovation Leader of the Year many times. Tell us a little bit about the journey, about how the Party People came to be, where it started and how different things were in the early days.
Yeah, so as you know, I'm the Chief Party Dude today, but it didn't start with me. I'm not the founder. My mum started the business. She was a clown and she used to cater for kids' parties, and that kind of, got her involved in the party sort of category, and she decided that she wanted to take that a little further and opened up a party store. And that was 35 years ago now. And and then it just kind of took off from there. And look, she's been a pioneer as well. I mean, she was the one that decided to launch online in 1998 for the business, and gave it to me as a techie son to figure it all out. We launched online in 1999. So things have changed a lot since then, but and doing one order a month, which we got really excited about when we first launched. But things are much different today, and I don't know where to start. So I guess you ask the questions and I'll answer them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the landscape would be completely different. There was no social media or social commerce. There was no automation or systems. I think one of the things that I love about your story, and it's grown with you over the years, is that one of the strategies that you've always shared quite openly is about being first to market. I know that you were one of the first people to appear on Shark Tank. You were Google's first customer in Australia. I think you were one of the first to launch click and collect, even not just in your space, but amongst many verticals. Tell us a little bit about the strategy and why that's been working for you so well, and is that something that you will continue to invest in?
Yeah, I would say like in the early days, it was really not for us about being first and being first to market. We were really just thinking about our customers in the beginning, and opportunity, really. I guess when we launched online in '99, my mum was just thinking opportunity. She was just thinking pretty simply that people, work 9 to 5 and can't get to a retail store and might need to shop online. So, and the majority of our customers were, working mums and things like that. So she had this just idea of making it more accessible, and that really was what that was all about. It wasn't really about being a pioneer online at the time. I mean, online seemed like a stupid idea to most people at that point in time. It seems really hard to fathom that. But I mean, my grandfather was her business partner, and he was freaking out about her spending 10 grand to build a website to sell stuff when, no one bought online. So he just thought it was crazy. And a lot of people would have. So, kind of, she was thinking about the customer and what things might make the customer easy. And it was the same with click and collect. I mean, I don't actually know whether I know we were pretty early in the click and collect space. I'm not sure if we were first, but certainly we launched with click and collect in '99. We would have been first in party. I mean, we're the first party store online, so we would have been early across retail anyway. But really that was just about something we could offer. Why not offer it? Give customers a choice. I mean, at the time we were taking our parcels up to Australia Post. There was no e-parcel back then. We had to actually drive the parcels up to the post office to ship them. So it seemed like a nice idea for them to come and get it from us. So yeah, I mean, it really wasn't about pioneering. Even with Google, I mean, we were just improving our website and we were looking at ways of reaching customers better, and Google was launching. So we decided to give that a go. And I guess our whole strategy along the way has always been just give stuff a little bit of a test run, especially when the barrier to entry is low. Give things a try, test them out, and grow from there. And we've tested many things that haven't worked out. You obviously only hear about the good ones. And look, we've been late. We've been late on some things too. I mean, we were late to marketplaces, and that really has made our life very difficult. We were late to, we've been late on a few fronts, and so we've learned a lot about being early and being late, and when to be early and when to be late. And that's something we've, I guess, learned along the way and refined our strategy on. But yeah, like you said, still today, I don't know how we're doing it as a small business compared to large retailers, but we still manage to pioneer stuff. We're trying Magic Mirror at the moment, which has been pretty cool to work with, and scan and go technology and things like that, which, again, is still industry first and fun to test out.
100%. And I mean, and with the Shark Tank story brought 1 million views to your website, which was, I mean, back in those days, it was about trying to get PR and although that wasn't something that you planned, and that's everything that every retailer is trying to do nowadays, break through that noise. So I guess being there early, you had that audience to yourself. So Dean, shipping's been a really big differentiator for you. One of the first in the industry to offer express flat rate shipping across the country. I know that you've dabbled in crowdsourced delivery and using companies like Zoom2You. For many of those years, I know that you were managing that through Excel spreadsheets, Access query databases, and you're doing a lot of that development yourself, I guess a lot of those manual tasks. Why were you doing it that way? And I guess at what tipping point did you decide you needed to invest in automation?
Yeah, good question. I guess when we first launched online, there was no shipping platforms at all. They didn't exist. So, we had to build it from scratch. And like you said, we kind of were adding new options as they, pretty quickly in the early days when there was no solution to those. So, we first had we launched with regular post and click and collect in '99. That regular post option is different to what it looks like today. Back then, we actually had regular post, which was different by region. So we'd say, regional New South Wales was $15 and Sydney was $9 and things like that. So we had, Perth was $40 and all this sort of stuff. And back then you could do that, and we got away with it. Then we moved to flat rate shipping, which, boosted our sales because we went to flat rate nationwide, because we worked out that our average freight cost, even though some were expensive to Perth, the average freight was only costing us $10 or $11. So we subsidized it and came up with flat rate shipping. Then when we started adding things like express, same day, multiple carriers we even had, things started to get complicated. So I created an Excel spreadsheet that helped my team decide how to ship something. and just basically built the rules in Excel, and they typed in the order details, and it told them what to do. And that was, I guess, my shipping platform at the time. And yeah, I mean, it was pretty good because, I mean, especially going through so much change, we could adapt pretty quickly. Every time a new shipping option or a new carrier came along, I just jumped in and fixed it up, and away we went. We could trial new carriers. There's a few carriers that aren't around today that we started trialing same day with, and that was something we could do with by having Excel. We could be agile. I guess what's changed is, first of all, I was supporting that as a CEO, which as we grew became just a pain in the ass. So I wanted to stop being the IT support. But I guess also technology has moved. There's last mile things that happen now around emails and tracking and communicating with the customer. There's a lot of carriers, and the tech integrations are complicated. And we just felt this was probably, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, I can't remember when it was, that we needed a solution that that company's job was to be agile in the freight space, and they would be much quicker at adapting than I would, because the technology just started to become too complex and too difficult for me to continue to maintain. And that's when we started with at the time, which was Tamando, which I don't think they are around anymore. And we launched with them as a platform, and yeah, that worked. And then obviously we transitioned to Starshipit when Tamando stopped working.
It's incredible how many retailers we still come across, though, who are still taking parcels down to the post, or who are manually punching in numbers or creating their own rule sheet. It's not uncommon to still hear that, but I totally hear what you're saying. It becomes unsustainable after a while, or you need to start investing in other areas that no one else can do. Tanuj, just a question for you. I mean, I know that you work really closely with awesome retailers. You're building out their websites, helping out with system integrations, looking at how to streamline back-end processes. What are the sort of the trends that you're seeing, Tanuj, today around the adoption of shipping automation? I mean, is that a lot faster now because there's a lot more technologies, or are people still unaware that there's these fabulous systems in place that can, really automate and reduce a lot of those errors?
Jennifer, like what we have noticed is that businesses all around in general are looking to automate as many processes as possible to make themselves efficient and deliver great customer experience. And this holds true for e-commerce businesses as well, right? Merchants want to spend more time focusing on their business growth instead of manual activities and issues, right? And automation is the key to faster growth at lower cost, right? And when it comes to shipping automation, I believe that it is fast becoming a norm and a fundamental requirement for all e-commerce stores, independent of the size they are, right? And a lot of our customers are now looking at shipping automation to make their checkout and delivery process as efficient as possible. And as e-commerce stores continue to grow and number of orders increase, businesses realize that they must automate their shipping process to improve efficiency and reduce human involvement and decision making in that process, because it can lead to a lot of errors as well. Now, what we have noticed is even enterprise businesses, who have a large amount of manpower at their disposal, are also looking to automate their shipping processes. This was true before the pandemic kicked in, but has now been accelerated, right? And what we saw that our merchants who had their shipping automated at the time when the pandemic struck, they were able to deal with the sudden increase in orders due to the lockdowns relatively much more easily than those who were dependent on the manual shipping process. So, it is important, and merchants look to provide multiple shipping options to their customers. Things like multiple shipping options to their customers make life easier for their wholesale and dispatch team, reducing errors and returns, right? Thus, leading to a happy customer and probably a happier staff.
I might just jump in on that as well, and I would say, Tanuj is absolutely right. That for me as a business, as a small to medium. And he mentioned at the beginning of the webinar was that, we're an agile business. And I think being agile is a key competitive advantage, especially for small to medium businesses. And that's what platforms like Magento Offer and like Starshipit as a shipping platform, they allow me to focus on my business, and having a platform that is an expert in shipping, and like Starshipit, for example, it means I don't have to focus on that. They'll engineer, they'll pioneer in the shipping space, and I can leave that to them because that's all they think about all day is pioneering in shipping. And when new things happen and something new changes in the freight space, like we're seeing all the time, we're seeing, especially out of the US, we're hearing about, delivering to car boots and things like that, and drone delivery and all these innovations that are happening in the freight space. I don't have to worry about as much. I mean, I try to keep on top of them anyway as a CEO, but it's not my core focus anymore. I don't have to be an expert in freight because that's what, I've got a platform that is there that is always thinking about that. And as innovation happens in the freight space, I can then, count on someone like Starshipit to say, hey, Dean, there's this new feature now. We've it's something new's come along and we've thought about it for you. And this is how we can help your business. And I think that's quite important, especially in today's day and age, because the only way to win at the moment is to be agile.
True. And look, you mentioned drones, right? And there's this interesting startup in Canberra that is actually doing coffee and food delivery at the moment using drones in a particular part of the...
Sounds great. We're doing one right now, actually.
Canberra. Sorry? Yeah, they are. But they actually, it was a interesting story. Last week they had to block a particular area because they were actually getting magpies attacking their drones. So
it's an uncontrollable delay.
That's correct. So, but obviously, the innovation has already started, as we can see, and it will be interesting to see where it takes us in the next 3 years, or even next year. Forget about 3 years.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, you hear about drone deliveries for high value products or medical. So just to see that starting to come at that sort of retail and specialty type product, I'm keen to watch that space. I think the other thing that people are also realizing is that they need to future-proof the business. A lot of businesses or small to medium businesses start off with that sort of one carrier or one postal service. And not having sort of additional options when things go wrong or when there's capacity. I mean, we're seeing it in the news. I think there was something that dropped in this morning around the US Postal Service, sending out a big message around, no more delivery. They've hit a big, massive backlog. I know we're seeing that here locally as well. There's a lot of companies are suffering in trying to get the volume out. So being able to have a few options is definitely another reason. Dean, you touched on it earlier. Commando was your first shipping platform. They came around a lot earlier than us. But I take myself back to 2019. I never forget that call I got from you. And it was, Jen, I need to have a chat. We need to talk. I need to learn about Starshipit. What are you doing? I need to make a change. I've got 30 days. To make this enormous change and this decision, let's hook up on a call. What was going through your mind at that time? I mean, it was unfortunate news. Commando had to shut doors and you had to make a big transition, to a new provider. There was so many things. I know that you were I remember you ran it like a tender almost, Dean, with all of the different requirements that you had and the must-haves and the nice-to-haves. Take me through a little bit around that process and, what are sort of the main things that you were looking for when you were doing those comparisons?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, you're bringing back a bit of a nightmare for me in terms of that time of my life. But Commando literally sent us an email saying 30 days we're turning you off. And I'm just, straight. The first thing that comes to mind is, I can't service customers if I can't ship stuff. And it was just we were looking at Armageddon in 30 days if we didn't make a change. So we had a pretty big problem and not much time to solve it. As you know, projects with e-commerce can take some time, especially with highly complex businesses. So, my first thinking was in a normal scenario, I would struggle to get a new freight system on board within 6 months, let alone 30 days. So, that presented a big challenge for me. And the first thing I did, like you said, the first thing I did was jump on the phone to a bunch of platforms. Starshipit was one of them. And said, look, tell me a bit about your platform. How does it work? And basically from that phone call, I think I cut it down to about 5 or 6 that I thought could be potential solutions. And then from there, as you know, Jen sent each of them out a very detailed spreadsheet with a list of requirements or features that I needed. And that process was interesting in itself because, quite a few people come back and pretty much everyone came back with something that was missing that we wanted. So none of them were Tamando, which was what we were used to, but they were all worked a bit different. So really, I guess, and, with a tender, I guess it's probably also sometimes just about fit. So, we were feeling out who was a good fit for us in terms of culture and strategy and, what businesses were agile and thinking about the future rather than just being a solution for today. So, we had a bit of a list of stuff that we sent out and got everyone to tender back. And then from there, we ran a process of elimination, which, was, I think we got down once that first spreadsheet came back from everyone. I think we narrowed it down to 3 that had all of them had a few things missing. And that's when we started talking to each of them about, what customizations could happen to get to that last few bits. And in the end, we picked Starshipit, which has been great, and you guys have been excellent to work with to date. It's been fantastic, and in hindsight, we made the right choice. You never know if you make the right choice at the time, even when you've got a spreadsheet. But things have been pretty good. I've been through quite a few implementations. Even in a previous life, I was a project business analyst at Woolworths, and projects always have, particularly IT projects, always have bugs and problems. And with jumping on Starshipit, I don't recall any major hiccups in the launch. And the fact that we only had a few days to spare before Tamando turned us off, and I think you even got us a bit more of an extension as a buffer when you guys jumped in and spoke to Tamando on our behalf and got us a bit more of a buffer. We managed to launch, and it was great. So it was, it could have been a complete disaster, and it wasn't. And that's all credit to Starshipit for getting us live.
I think we all felt that period as a bit of a nightmare. It was all nerve-wracking. There were so many things to understand, and I know Tamando had done a lot of hard coding in their times. Our platform tries to focus a lot more on, we're constantly updating features and changes, and rather than hard coding them to specific clients, although there's those options if we need to, it's all about trying to build out the roadmap so that you can sustainably support and maintain all of those developments. Tanuj, there's a lot of
Halloween at the time.
Oh God, I remember it was crazy. It was all I could think about was Christmas is around the corner. Peak season's around the corner. It's all about holding the fort, stability, and here we were talking about all of these new features. And I think there was a lot of focus around the front end as well. I mean, you'd built out a lot of things around the checkout just to make sure that shipping labels come out and all of that dispatch process is automated, but B, that there's no impact to your conversion. And I think that was, one of the reasons why we reached out and tried to get a little bit of extension, which we were really lucky to get. I think on that point around checkout, I know, Tanuj, we're constantly talking about frictionless checkout. Why is shipping such a major aspect to that? I know for Dean, he spent a lot of time building out courier options and delivery options, making sure there was convenient options for customers. I guess what are retailers leaving on the table by not really investing in that aspect of their business?
Jennifer, as you're aware, I'm a big advocate of frictionless shopping experience and checkout. And in fact, we discussed the importance of a frictionless checkout experience in the previous 2 episodes of this series, right? Everything a merchants do on their store is to drive customers to make the purchase, right? And the rise of e-commerce has put an additional emphasis on convenience and shipping. The ability to receive products in a timely manner can have a massive influence on a customer's buying decision. Our experience and also statistics show that 7 out of 10 shopping carts are normally abandoned on the checkout page, and shipping often is the main culprit. When merchants fail to ensure that they can cater to most customers and their expectations, they end up losing the sale and possibly a lifetime customer, right? Shoppers might love the product, but if they don't like the shipping options, they won't go ahead with the purchase. I recently read a report that was developed by one of our partners, and they mentioned that 77% shoppers reported that they have abandoned a purchase if they don't like the shipping options. So for me, retailers are leaving a lot on the table in terms of conversion rates on their websites, but not investing properly in their shipping. What they offer the customer, the options they provide the customer.
I think we've seen that even more recently with COVID too, I would say. I think as shoppers, we all know, I don't know for others, but I know for me, when I was shopping during COVID, I was staying home and doing groceries from home shopping. And when they didn't have that, for a while there, Woolworths were, I shopped with Woolworths, and it was I have to wait 3 days for my groceries. That was forget it. I can't wait 3 days for my groceries. So you were just abandoning the cart. And I think, that's probably where I've just experienced it, thinking, well, that would be my customer too. If they're coming to my cart and I don't have the option that suits them, they're going to abandon cart and go shop with someone else who does.
Yeah, particularly when you're in events and things are often left to last minute, right? You're going to need every option.
Yeah.
It's funny, I had the same. Throughout September, I'm a September baby, and there's probably about 12 other friends and family that are all born in September. So I was buying presents online. And it's funny because I found it was the first time that I was starting to shop using the search keywords, same-day delivery or 3-hour delivery, ordering 1 or 2 days out, but everyone was so delayed at the moment with shipping. So I was just looking for anyone, I was looking for bed sheets. I was typing in bed sheets, same day delivery. So it's interesting that people are also searching that way to come to websites. One of the things that I think came up a lot in the tender was making sure that we had the right couriers attached to the platform, that we had the right integrations to support you, not just for now, Dean. I think we had Australia Post, Star Trek, ZoomTo, and a few others, but also I think one of the questions you asked was what other options are there, and especially now, I think back to that comment around future-proofing and all of the news around couriers suffering challenges. There's that whole debate around it's better to have one courier that meets all your needs and you get the best shipping price because then you've got economies of scale, versus, spreading that and diversifying that. But is that risky to do? And how do you manage that, Dean? What's your advice for others in the space that are sort of dabbling with, they're trying to scale their business so they don't necessarily want to have so many different couriers and not get great shipping prices, but then also they don't want to be in this position that most retailers are in at the moment where postal services are suffering significant delays and they do need to have a look at other options. What are your thoughts around that, Dean?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm probably more of an advocate of having options, and that's been a big win at the current environment with Australia Post struggling. Even I think a couple of weeks ago they stopped picking up in Sydney, and I think at the moment they're not picking up in Melbourne, or there's some stuff around Melbourne, the Australia Post not picking up. So, when you get a scenario like that, by having some options ready to go, you can switch carrier pretty quickly and deal with those customers. And that's where, again, a platform like yours allows us to do that very quickly. We already have those carriers there, so we can adjust, and we do use a few carriers. We don't have 50 carriers. We have 5. But having those few other carriers, which we do a small amount of volume, but we give them a bit where there's a few lanes where they're cheaper on, also allows us to turn them on as a full carrier if we experience what we have recently, which is Australia Post saying they can't do it or having issues. So I think you need contingency plans in your business, and having multiple carriers gives you that contingency. If you've got all your eggs in one basket, you'll get cheaper rates. But when they fall over, I think you'll be worried about, those cheaper rates will be the last thing on your mind. Your customers will be first, and so you need that diversity in your carriers to be able to switch. In the case of an issue, I don't think you can have all your eggs in basket, but certainly, it is a trade-off. We do consider that around, if we're shifting volume out of, say, Australia Post to have all their pricing tiers, that'll affect our pricing. So it's got to be taken into account. But I think, for us, my personal opinion is you need diversity and you need options. You can't rely on one carrier, otherwise you're you're putting your business at risk.
Yeah, no, really good point, Dean. I'm just having a look at the chat, and I thought it might be really good while we're on the topic of carriers. Dean Capel has asked a question. I'll just read that out if not everyone can read that. It says, Starshipit focuses on the tech and a best fit for solution. Others are aligned to carriers, so keen for your thoughts on how they can be agnostic. And then I think the second question that he asked is, when you use multiple carriers, how do you manage varied customer experiences? I think that's a really good question, Dean, in that, I guess to clarify for those who aren't aware, Starshipit is an agnostic platform, so we're not a reseller or a freight aggregator. And what that means is we don't have our own shipping, we don't sell or resell shipping to our customers. We're purely an enabler that connects retailers to shipping options. So we've got 30 plus different couriers, varied around, domestic and international options. How do we stay agnostic is really easy because we're not reselling freight. It's up to the retailer and who they choose. So you naturally need, and we encourage the retailer to have a direct relationship with the courier. We think that's really important. There's nothing worse than, pickups don't happen or there's delays or you need to find out about your shipment and you need to then log a ticket with an aggregator or a reseller and then have to wait for them to log a ticket with the courier and then hear that information back. So we always, really encourage that direct contact. We're also not a cost comparison site, so we're not throwing everyone's rates against each other. It's really around the retailer, building those relationships out, exploring which couriers that they are interested in using. Often we get retailers asking, can you make some introductions or can you recommend? We can absolutely, provide all the options and who we recommend for, small freight, large freight, metro freight, line haul, etc., just based on our knowledge. And we're always presenting lots of different options to the customer or the retailer in this case. And I think that's really important because there are rules in the engine that can look at things like making automatic selection around what's the cheapest carrier. So we have a least cost routing option that can make that really easy for the retailer so that they're not having to make all those comparisons all the time. And that takes away a lot of, saves you a lot of time. But at the same time, it does still enable the retailer and the courier to have a direct relationship, which is really, really important. Tanuj, I've got a question for you. I mean, in terms of shipping strategy, I know, Dean, you mentioned that a few times and you were looking at the law of averages as to, work out what was the best price to put at the checkout. And I know a lot of retailers come to you, Tanuj, for advice on, am I flat rating it? Am I putting a live rate? Am I, what am I doing at the checkout? How am I going to use shipping? What sort of, what's your advice around those strategies? Have you seen a direct correlation around sales uplift when shipping strategy is right at the checkout?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. As we mentioned, as we discussed earlier in the conversation, right? That shipping plays an important role in terms of your conversion. And, as I mentioned, the study that I read, which says that 77% of shoppers would actually abandon their shopping cart if they're not happy with the shipping option, even if they love the product. So my advice to merchants is they're looking to improve the checkout experience is firstly to understand their customer expectations around shipping and then work out how they can meet those expectations. If your customers crave for free shipping, work out at what cart value is it possible for you to offer free shipping to your customers, right? Then advertise that magic number for free shipping across the website. Have banners and on checkout that you are $10 away from free shipping or $20 away from free shipping. This alone has helped merchants not only improve conversion but also increase their average order value. And I'll give you an example of our customer Art Swimwear. They actually have free shipping, but they have minimum average order value of X amount, right? I think it's $120 or $140, right? So you have to, and they don't even sell less than that. So you can't buy something for $60, $70 and leave. They say that, look, we offer free shipping, and we offer free shipping to everyone, but you have to spend this amount to buy from us. And, it has worked wonders for them. And, the other option I would advise to merchants is that, look at the tiered shipping options. There are customers who want to get their purchase quickly. They are used to the Iconics or the Skechers of the world, and they are happy to pay extra to get express shipping, sometimes the same day delivery as you mentioned earlier in your comments, Jennifer, right? But on the other end of that spectrum are the customers who are happy to wait and pay nothing or minimum amount for delivery, right? And I believe in these scenarios, the live shipping rates can play an important role because it allows merchants to present customers with various options and the exact amount they can expect to pay for the option they want to go with. Something different that we have also noticed that plays an important part is your buy now and pick up in store trends. So the click and collect options are really gaining momentum, and we recently launched Dusk Australasia website with click and collect, and they have seen a massive uptake on using this particular option. Maybe another point, and I'm sure Dean will probably be able to add some on this, is that make sure that I consider exchange and returns as part of your shipping policy, right? And merchants have to ensure that their returns and exchange policy, because everybody looks at that and see if I have to send the item back, how much is it going to cost me? What is the process? What is the procedure, and things like that. So merchants have to ensure that their return and exchange policy works for them rather than against them. And in many categories, like in fashion, 30%, the return could be as much as 30%. Right? So it is important that the return policy is accessible and the process is as smooth and frictionless as possible. And I know many merchants are apprehensive about returns, right? Because it can be costly for them. But they have we always advise them that a customer-friendly return policy is an important tool to resolve customer issues and boost the reputation of your business. What are your thoughts on returns, Dean?
Yeah, look, I'm probably in the other school actually of things. We don't offer free returns. Obviously there's consumer law you have to consider, because if the product's faulty, you have to offer that free return. But in a general event, we don't offer free returns. We have a very low return rate as it is, but I guess, look, I mean, we're a business that chases profitability, not volume. And we've looked at free returns and it just hasn't worked for us when we trialed some stuff in the early days where customers would do what, to be honest, a lot of people do, which is they might buy 3 costumes and keep 1 and send 2 back. Buy 3 sizes and figure out which one fits. So look, we would definitely increase our sales if we offered free returns, there's no doubt. But as a profitability decision, we've decided that offering free returns doesn't work for us. And look, our business is different to other businesses. I think other businesses where free returns does work, particularly in fashion when the margins are bigger as well. For them it might work, but for us, it just does, like from a profitability perspective anyway, we just don't see it stacking up, so we don't offer it.
And look,
I think it's really...
It is amazing.
Sorry, Tanuj. I was just going to say, it's real. I think also we see that it's pretty specific to industry verticals. I think party and events, there's certainly verticals that it doesn't make sense to have free returns. Fashion, it's heavy, and you see conversion increase a lot with a really good return strategy. I mean, and that probably makes sense. I know when I buy extra things that I probably don't need, and I know it's got a good returns policy, I end up keeping them because I can end up, either giving them as a gift or using them. It might be a little bit harder for event wear to do that. So yeah, totally see why you would make that decision, Dean.
And it is you have to, I guess, you have to look at your, as Dean said, you look at your profitability and see if it's worthwhile for you to offer those free returns, right? And a lot of businesses struggle with the fact that, their customers will buy 4 or 5 items, keep 1, and then, return another 4. And, obviously there's a shipping cost, and then there's labor cost in, receiving that item and putting back it into stock, and then, back on the floor or warehouse.
Yeah, totally. And I think just on your point, Dean, about having all those different options, and then going back to Dean Kapler's question around how to manage varied customer experiences, I think you do it really well, Dean. I really love how you've got you set out the expectation around, okay, if you're paying this much more, the delivery is going to cost it's costing this much more because you're getting it sooner. You've also got the calendar at checkout, so you can order ahead of schedule. I mean, how important was that for you when you were offering all of those different options at the checkout to ensure that you were managing the right expectation as well, particularly for people who are paying a premium?
Yeah, and in party, I mean, people, like you said earlier, people in party often are ordering last minute, so they need it by the weekend. So, and also on the flip side, as a business, you mentioned the calendar, which I guess hard to explain it here on the webinar, but people can always go to my checkout and see what we have at the cart there. There is a calendar on the cart, which the customer can say what day they need it by. And then quite often what we found having that calendar, before having it, is that customers would say, oh, look, I'll pay regular post, and they'd order it on a Friday and say I need it on Saturday. And then they'd be disappointed on Monday when we called them and said, oh, look, sorry, you ordered it on Friday night and we just realized we couldn't deliver to you on Saturday. And they'd be pissed off. So I think, it seems crazy, but people obviously expect that. So by putting that calendar there, we were notifying them up front that that shipping option doesn't work for them. They need to select Express. And for us, that's critical, especially in party, because quite often people want stuff by a particular date. And if it gets there late, it's just not like I'll wear it for the next event. I mean, if it says happy first birthday and you get it to them after the first birthday party, it's too late. So with us, timing is critical. Yeah, so timing's critical. And I think for us, what we do as well in our strategy is we have, regular post, and that's your cheap option. And that is where the customer isn't specific. But, with Express and same day, that's a premium cost to the customer, where, we don't subsidize that shipping. We make them pay for it. And what, our thinking there is that the customer is less price sensitive when they're in a hurry. And I mean, interestingly enough, just an interesting stat I found out recently was that more than 50% of our freight is Express, which is huge. I didn't expect that when I did some analysis, that half our customers want it urgently. And the interesting thing we also find when I'm speaking to my team is that half of those customers that ordered Express don't actually need it urgently. They just did it anyway because they want it quicker, and Express wasn't that much more expensive, or their boss is paying for it, so they don't care. So like we find often when we're talking to customers, especially if there's some problem with the order, quite often they've actually got more time. They just wanted it quickly. So I think, like Tanuj was saying earlier, like customers have different expectations, and I think not every customer is the same. And some people just want it urgently regardless of when they need it. And other people, plan in advance and order their Halloween items in January, and it just, every customer is different. And I think having those options allows you to cater for all these different scenarios and, again, get that conversion when otherwise you might not, by having more options for the customer.
100%. And I think a lot of people are thinking that everything needs to get faster. And I mean, it certainly has over the last decade. We've gone from, slow shipping to fast shipping. But I think to your point, Dean, it's also about transparency. Customers, they might not need it fast, but they're picking the fast option because they're getting better notifications, or they're getting more transparency, or they're getting the SMS, or they're getting more clarity around the map, being able to follow their order. And they just want to know that they're going to be home to be able to receive that, and not have to duck down to the post office if they get a left card or anything like that. So it's also about transparency and convenience. Dean, last year, I mean, we're still in the pandemic somewhat, only a few more days till it starts to open up, but that would have had to have shaken up your business in a big way. I know we had a couple of chats throughout it, and you were having all sorts of discussions around. I mean, lots of volume no one was, being able to sort of celebrate, or events was non-existent. I know it was tough. How did you survive that time? And I know that's a really loaded question, but were there any, I guess, significant nuggets of advice that you would share with other retailers listening today, like, from what you went through and what you've learned throughout that time, to better adapt for these type of unforeseen circumstances?
Yeah, so there was a couple of things, actually. I'd say the first thing was, it's going to sound so fundamental, but just talking to customers. In March 2020, when the pandemic hit, we were down 92%. So our sales were at 8% of prior year, which was nothing. And, we had an emergency meeting. We had a bit of a chat internally, and we said, look, let's talk to those 8% of customers, find out what they're buying for, because parties are illegal. Like, no one should be having a party. What are they even buying? What we found out was people were buying things to do at home, things to do with homeschooling. You know, we sell some arts and crafts, so they were buying that. They were buying baking supplies because people were stuck at home, so they were baking and cake decorating and, you know, doing stuff with their kids. So we found that customers were not buying party supplies from us. They were buying things to do at home. That was what we became for customers that had shopped with us. So we pivoted. We changed our website to focus on, you know, a banner at the top which said, you know, coronavirus survival, we called it at the time. And inside that was baking and arts and crafts and dress up. And I mean, categories we already stocked stuff for, most of them. So nothing new. It was just repackaged them in a different way to focus on what customers were actually doing with us. And I guess the lesson we learnt was I mean, you know, it kind of seems fundamental, but to talk to your customers more often and get that feedback up through the chain to understand how your customer is changing. Because we learned very quickly that they weren't shopping parties and they were shopping for home. And it made us just think, like, what else do we miss from our customers that our customers shop with us, and opportunities that we're missing that our team know about, but we don't. And we need to be agile like that as a business. So I guess that taught us, that was probably the biggest tip, was to just talk to our customers more often and get that feedback up through the chain to us as CEOs to make better decisions, make strategic direction changes. And that was the biggest thing we learned. And I mean, we finished up the year in 2019 beating 2019 numbers in 2020.
Wow.
Which, you know, I mean, I never would have expected that to happen. I think the second thing I would say is about what we learned sort of to the back end of that was we did learn as restrictions did open up, you know, people started having parties and started having events, and the customer changed again. And again, we learned that talking to our customers made us aware of that quicker, made us adapt to it quicker. You know, we got rid of that coronavirus survival category and then started focusing on people having at-home parties, not large events. Which again meant that we had to pivot in terms of other areas. Like, you know, I mean, we're going through Christmas at the moment and it's a bit of a difficult one, but last year in Christmas, you know, we made sure we focused on, you know, for example, bonbons. We made sure we were stocking bonbons in 10 and 12 packs, not 100 packs. You know, people weren't having those big parties. So, you know, it was about just talking to our customers and adapting. And I think that was the key thing we learned from our customers, was that, you know, that they were changing in their expectations of what they bought from us, and we had to make sure we stocked products to suit that.
That's huge, Dean. I think it's also your positive outlook. I know that when we chatted, you were just always so positive throughout it. And I know that would have been really tough. I think one of the conversations that stood out for me was, Jen, you know what, I've got a long list of to-do and all these other projects that I've been wanting to work on. Now's the time, you know, and also looking at that internally. But, you know, pivoting comes from and stems from just that positivity and that, you know, here's an opportunity. There's a challenge right now, but there's an opportunity because there's so many businesses that wouldn't have looked at it in that way and not pivoted. Or not had the ability to do that. Just a question, Tanuj, I'm really curious to know what sort of calls were you getting or are getting through the pandemic when people were sort of, retailers are suffering in this way, were they turning to you for any sort of specific help around any one thing? You know, I know a lot of people were suffering around stability of the internet and speed of the site was a big thing for a lot of retailers. But in terms of advice, was there anything that was a common theme that was coming your way as well, Tanuj?
Look, I think we were probably in a lucky position in a way that, like, you know, most of our customers actually did very well during the pandemic, right? During the lockdowns, like, you know, some of our merchants, like, you know, they saw, you know, 100% or 150% growth in their business. So, like, you know, I think automation was something they always wanted to talk to us. And so they came to us with shipping, like, you know, looking for shipping automation, and, like, you know, which we delivered to them with our partners like Starshipit, right? Because they had seen, like, you know, that, you know, earlier if they were doing 20 orders in a day, suddenly some of them were doing 60, 70 orders in a day. Customers that had both retail and, like, you know, brick and mortar store and online, they found that, like, you know, they're actually, you know, a lot of their orders are now moving to online. So, you know, then they came to us and then they realized that, look, you know, there is a bigger target market for them to focus on. So, they were talking to us about new advertising avenues, like, how they can market to other areas, investing more in their marketing and things like that. So, like Dean said, it gave people an opportunity to look at the new things, like, things that what has been working and what hasn't been working since the pandemic stuff. So, but I would say, like, shipping automation was probably one of the biggest question that people asked us for.
Yeah, we couldn't believe the influx that we had to the site with new signups for shipping automation. But what was crazy was the number of businesses that had never even set up an online store, that was still, offline channel stores. It's just setting up, a website for the very first time and trying to learn what most retailers have learned in a couple of years, within a couple of weeks. That was a crazy time. Dean, you might want to show off your Halloween.
Oh.
What was that, Dean?
And I was going to say, I mean, we saw that in our category more recently, where, obviously in the 2021 form of the pandemic, retail stores were closed in Sydney. So what we found was, across our industry, sales were still down around 80%. Or that's what I'm hearing from all my suppliers, that most people were down around 80 to 90%. Where when the stores were closed, like our business, because we're online and we were already there, and other retailers were trying to get online at that time, we performed strongly in what was a difficult time, because while our market had shrunk, our strong online meant that our store didn't do so well, but our online thrived through that period. So again, 2021 for us is up on 2019. But the store is obviously decimated. Our store's down massively. Our store's down 80%. So, definitely being strong online and already being there has helped. But certainly a lot of our competitors started to get online through this period. So we'll go through an interesting phase after this, which will be a lot of new online competitors have started out and found their feet online through this phase. And I think it'll be quite interesting.
But I think I have a feeling that there will be influx of customers back into the store once the pandemic finishes, because people do want to go out, people do want to experience the real world as well, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's right.
For you, Dean, there's a question that Matthew has put in regarding, you're getting information from your customers, and we are running out of time now. So if you could, answer it quickly. How, you mentioned about getting information from your customers on what they are buying. How did you go about finding that information? Did you use email, surveys? What was the process?
Yeah, it's a good question, but at the time it was only 8% of our traffic, so it wasn't many people. So we just made phone calls or spoke to them face to face, like if they came into our store. So it was literally just, we spoke to every single customer over a 3 or 4 day period, because we had the capacity, because we weren't very busy. And so, it was important for us strategic. I guess like Jen said earlier, I personally have this attitude that change is an opportunity, not a problem. And we were down 92%, but we saw it as an opportunity. And it's like that with e-commerce in general. Anytime there's a change, a Google algorithm update, a lot of people see that as a problem that they have to adapt to. My view is that should always be seen as an opportunity, because if you can adapt quicker than everyone else, you'll be able to take that as an opportunity rather than have it as a problem that sets you back. And so I guess that's what we saw at the time. We spoke to every customer because we saw an opportunity that if we could learn what's going on of that 8%, maybe we could scale that.
Yeah. Look, I think we can. Yeah. Thanks, Dean. Thanks for that. Look, I think we can talk for hours. You've got so many things you can share with us, Dean, and but we are already over time, so I think we will have to finish this before we get disconnected from the platform. So, So look,
show us your mask, Dean. Pop on your Black Friday Halloween mask. I'm dying to see it. This is one example.
I showed Jen this earlier, and she loves it, but. So we're selling Happy Halloween face masks. They are COVID safe. So that's again another example of our pivot. I showed Jen before. It wasn't supposed to be part of the webinar, but Jen obviously put me on the spot. So
I want one.
Happy to
She always does that. Right? Anyway,
It's all part of the fun. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Jen. I'll get you back later.
So look, before we finish, I would like to invite our audience to join us in the next episode of this series, which is on 19th of October. The next episode focuses on the hidden cost of fraud and false declines to merchants. I'm joined by Ralph Pui, the country manager for ClearSale, and Matthew Alexander, e-commerce manager for Tendro, to discuss how e-commerce businesses can mitigate the growing challenge presented by fraudulent transactions. So, and thank you all for joining, and a special thanks to you, Dean and Jennifer, for taking the time out of your busy schedule and sharing your experiences with us. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, Tanuj. Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.